So first thing I'm going to start off with is a honey jar, and then I'm going to draw the shape of the door. I'm going to be using a permanent marker for this, but you can use anything like a felt tip, anything which is going to give you a rough idea of the shape that you want to go for. So I'm going to draw the shape of the door, and then I'm going to do a rough little line just for where I want to put a window afterwards. Now the window is going to be square, but I just want something very light for the moment, just so I have an idea of where I'm going to cut the shape out for the window. Then I'm going to be using some red clay. Now I don't have a rolling pin, so I'm just using the edge of one of my paintbrushes. And then I'm going to do a line down it for the shape of each of the boards on the door. I'm going to do 3, and then I'm going to cut out the sides and the top as well. And then once those sides have been sliced off and you want to make sure that the edges are neat, I'm going to start drawing out the shape of the window. Now for the window I'm going to be using a small palette knife, and I'm just going to cut through at the top and then the bottom, and then I'm going to peel that out. After that I'm going to go ahead and put it on the jar, and you want to roughly put it where you've already drawn that outline. And if it's a little different, that's fine, you can just go for a slightly different shaped door. You just don't want to have something which is so big it's bigger than the jar. It's just there as a rough guideline. After that you want to start adding some texture for the wood on the door. I'm going to be using some metal sculpting tools and then also some regular sculpting tools, and these have a rubber end and they're very good for sculpting on clay. That's actually what they're designed for. So I'm going to be using that and adding in that texture, and then I'm also going to make sure that the lines for between each of the wooden panels are a little more defined. And then around the edge you just want to add little red bricks. Now if you want to do this in a different colour you can go ahead. I wanted to do it in exactly the same colour as the door, but later on I'm going to be painting them so that they're a slightly darker colour, and I'm going to do that around the whole door. Once that's done I'm just going to push them up a little bit so that there's a tiny gap between the bricks and the door. And then I'm going to be moving on to polyfiller for the rest of it. You're going to start around the edges and carefully get that right up to the bricks. This is also what's going to hold it into place, so make sure that you really get it tightly against the edge so that there aren't any spaces for it to wiggle free. And then I'm just going to be using some small stones. These are the kind of stones that you'll see in driveways, so I actually just stole a couple of stones from my parents' driveway since I figured they wouldn't miss it. And then you just want to pop that into the polyfiller. But the important part is that when you're putting this in the polyfiller, make sure that the edges are covered by the polyfiller, otherwise later on these are just going to pop out and it's not going to look as nice. Once it's a little drier, you just want to scrape clean the edges and the bottom, and you can normally just do this with your finger, it'll be just fine that way. And once everything's dried, I'm going to be using an ink, and I'm going to be going over the edges around the door with a brown ink just to make them a darker colour, but you could use something which is more of a grey, any kind of colour that you want really. And then I'm also going to add a few lines right down the edges of the board as well to make it a little less flat. Now after that, what I'm going to be doing is adding some glue around the edges. There's still a chance that those little bricks could pop out. If you don't have a glue, you could also use a glue gun. You could even use super glue if you want. And then afterwards we're going to be spray painting this with a matte paint, so it should get rid of the gloss that any of the glue will leave behind. Right before I spray paint this, what I want to do is clean that little window space, and I'm going to be using nail varnish to get rid of the permanent marker that I've drawn onto the glass. Cover up the edge with blue tack. Now you won't be able to use the blue tack again after you've spray painted it, so hopefully you don't do this with the last bit of blue tack in your house. Then you want to spray paint everything, pull away the blue tack, and then that's it. You've now got a house jar.